What is the latest going on within the transfer portal since we spoke on yesterday's live show? Damien Martinez. He's going on tour. Now, if Damien Martinez sounds like a familiar name to you, and maybe you've heard him within your eardrums at like some just ridiculous hour of the morning, because my guy was putting on clinics over on the Pac-12 After Dark scene, okay? Ran for over 2,000 yards his first 2 years at Oregon State, double-digit touchdowns. He's a hot commodity. Pretty fair to say he's one of the best, if not the best player available right now in the transfer portal. I just mentioned he's going on tour. He's got 5 visits set for a 10-day span. So he's visiting Arizona, Mississippi State, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Miami between April 17th to April 27th. So there's a little bit of sense of urgency, it seems like, if you're Damien Martinez trying to get something done here. The most intriguing school of that list to me is Tennessee. We went up and saw them in Knoxville. They're loaded when it comes to that wide receiver room. They're trying to, I think, improve that offensive line. Would expect them to be in the market when it comes to that whole side of things, along with everybody else this transfer portal cycle. But they have Dylan Sampson at running back, who's a stud. And then behind him, they're trying to figure out what else they can add to make that room more formidable. If you're Damien Martinez, you go play in the SEC. You go share carries with someone who helps you stay, fresh for the most part, honestly. And let's be honest here, like the running back position, you are trying to not have as much wear and tear when you go and play in the NFL when it comes to the carries you get, so you can kind of share the load there. Tennessee's fascinating to me. Would be curious to see what they look like when it comes to the Damien Martinez sweepstakes. The early intel from Pete Nakos, who was on the show yesterday, is that Miami is trending in the right direction when it comes to landing his services. So we'll talk more about that a little bit later in the show. Texas A&M safety Jacobe Matthews entering the portal. It sounds like, per Steve Wiltfong, again, Steve Wiltfong, make sure you're following him, crushing all the coverage here for us here at On 3, dropping phone bongs left and right. He says it's sort of narrowed down for Jacobe Matthews between Florida State and Oregon. Now, it should be mentioned, Jacobe Matthews, a former 5-star recruit. He's going to be an instant impact guy wherever he ends up. Oregon, we're told, is the school to watch. Florida State, while they are obviously a tremendous track record when it comes to what they do in the transfer portal and taking transfers and allowing them to have a ton of success when they get to Tallahassee, that secondary room is a little bit more crowded. Oregon, it's also worth mentioning, is the current home of Jacobe Matthews' former teammate, Evan Stewart from A&M. So we'll see how that thing trends, but watch those two schools for him. That's a big fish out there right now. Again, one of the best available. Speaking of best available, the best wide receiver available is former Penn State wide receiver Keandre Lambert-Smith. We talked about how massive a loss that was for the Nittany Lions yesterday. A couple of schools in the mix for him right now per Pete Nakos. Auburn, A&M, Colorado, Georgia, USC, and West Virginia, all trying to make a push. USC kind of got in that action, it sounds like, later last night. NIL is going to be a factor here, is what we're told. Auburn, to me, I think is the most intriguing option here, just in terms of how it could have a ripple effect on the college football season, because you got Cam Coleman, and I know he's a true freshman, but we saw that spring game. You don't have to be an NFL scout to know that that dude can play some football. Peyton Thorne, I think, will be a little bit improved from last season. If you add another receiving threat, another experienced, more polished receiving threat to that offense, and you're running a system where you're moving the ball on the ground with Jarquez Hunter, and then add another layer, another weapon to that passing attack to help Peyton Thorne, I think you could make for some good things. I'm just saying that would, I think, potentially shake up the SEC the most if Auburn ends up being as potent as they can be offensively. A&M also making a push here. Keep an eye on them. Connor Wegman, you have to imagine it's attractive to go play with a quarterback of his caliber. West Virginia, it sounds like feels pretty good about the position they're in. Keandre Lambert-Smith is from Norfolk, Virginia. That's like a 6-hour drive to Morgantown. So it's a road trip still, but you're relatively close to home. Keep an eye on the Mountaineers and Keandre Lambert-Smith. I'm curious to see how quickly that gets done, how quickly he decides on a school, because all those schools are in the mix. Colorado cornerback Cormani McClain, we kind of heard rumblings around this right around early in the spring, announces he is planning to hit the transfer portal per Hayes Fawcett. He was an industry 5-star corner coming out of high school. On 3 had him as a 4-star. I'm curious to see what the market is for a Cormani McClain, because on one hand, he's not that far removed from being one of the most highly rated corners across the industry per other services. And Miami, from what I have been told, will not be in the Cormani McClain sweepstakes. It's important to remember Cormani McClain, before flipping his commitment to Colorado, originally committed to Miami. again, Miami will not be in the mix for Cormani McClain. I'm curious to see if maybe he ends up at a school like a UCF. It's not the SEC, it's not the Big Ten, but still, like, stay in the state of Florida, go play for a roster that's kind of trending upwards, if you ask me, and be able to stay in your home state. So curious, again, to see if the market ends up trending for him where he does end up getting some SEC interest, or if one of those other high-profile schools take a swing at him. But I like the UCF fit for Cormani McClain if it were just me. No intel just yet there, but I do know Miami will not be in the mix. Arkansas offensive tackle Andrew Chambley, 6'6", 304 pounds. He started 8 games last year, all SEC freshman for them. He can't transfer to an SEC school. I promise you, there's a lot of schools within the SEC that would love to get Andrew Chambley on their roster, but he can't do it unless he were to transfer there and sit out a year. Don't think he has any interest in doing that. We talked about it yesterday with Pete, man. Portal Pete Nakos told us these positions on the offensive and defensive line will be very high demand. Also, not a ton of supply to go with that high demand. So anytime demand is way up here and supply is way down there, what does that mean? The price point is through the roof. I have to believe that. Curious to see the other schools that get in the mix for him. He's got some visits already set up. SMU is going to make a home visit. They might have already made one, actually. He's going to visit UCLA today and Kansas State April 20th. So those schools right now all vying for his services. He could have a multiple-year impact for you, which is important to note. Another thing that adds some intrigue to Andrew Chambley, another thing that adds value to him. You don't just get him for 1 year. You get him next year and potentially the year after that, and then we'll see what goes on after that. Houston wide receiver Sam Brown, one of the top wide receivers in the portal. This is a name that doesn't get as much buzz because he's not transferring from an SEC or a Big Ten school. But Sam Brown's going to be one of the top wide receivers in the portal. 62 catches last year, over 800 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's 6'2", 195. He's got good speed. Like, this is a dude that I think a lot of folks that are in the Keandre Lambert sweepstakes right now will eventually, if they don't land Keandre Lambert-Smith, circle back and land someone like Sam Brown. I mean, I don't know exactly how he's perceived in relation to a Keandre Lambert-Smith, but have to believe that a lot of those schools that need wide receivers will take a very hard look at Sam Brown's tape. He's going to be high demand, and worth noting, he's already played some power conference football. Houston obviously was in the Big 12 last year, but West Virginia is where Sam Brown was previously before heading to Houston. One more guy to talk about here, Miami quarterback, Jacobe Brown. 6'4", 220 pounds, high-profile player out of high-profile player, out of high school in Valdosta, Georgia. Elite 11 finalist, had north of 20 offers. I'm very, very curious to see what his market looks like. And I say that for a lot of these guys, but specifically with Jacobe Brown, this is a guy who played at different points for Miami, never really was able to put it all the way together, whether it was an offensive thing, whether it was a fit thing, whether it was a him thing. For whatever reason, didn't work out. But you see the physical tools with what he had at the high school level and how he was projected. The big thing with him is wherever he goes, he doesn't have to play right away. Now, that might be a priority for Jacobe Brown. He might say, hey, I've been waiting around long enough. I'm trying to play today, Junior, and more power to him if that's the case. But if I'm Jacobe Brown, I'm not so sure I want to go somewhere where I can wait, learn from a offensive-centric head coach, someone who's got a specialty working with quarterbacks, and then once it, formulates a little bit more, I wait my turn, I get my time, then I'm set up for success to have a good year or two and hopefully have a chance to do something good at the NFL level. He's got 3 years of eligibility remaining. Now, if he wants to use all 3 of those, who knows, but he's got 3 years if he wants it to make the most of his situation. So that's the latest from the portal. If something breaks during this show, you'll hear us cut out pretty quickly and talk about it. But regardless, the portal continues to churn, continues to buzz. It's a slow burn. It's not the fireworks. It's not the craziest transfer portal season of all time. It's going to be about depth. It's going to be about what you have on your roster that's going to help you in November. Not a lot of flash in August, but November is where we'll see this portal cycle, I believe, show the most muscle. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.